Hi everyone, my name is Nina and I am the Events and Communications Officer here at the AUC. Welcome to today's Exchange webinar. The title of this exchange is eCycle, an electrically assisted shared bicycle scheme, and it will last approximately 1 hour. It's in the Travel and Transport LIFE framework. You can find more information about LIFE on our website. Thank you for registering, and thanks also to Jamie Pearson, the Environmental Sustainability Manager at Edinburgh Napier University. So just a little bit of housekeeping to go over now. I'm hoping that everyone can hear me well. For the time being, I've placed all of your microphones on mute just to avoid some background noise. You will have opportunities throughout the webinar to ask questions, so please unmute yourselves during these sessions by clicking the microphone button to the right-hand side of your name at the top right of the screen. If you don't have a working microphone, please type any questions you have into the on-screen chat box, which can be found in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. If you have any technical issues at all throughout this webinar, please let me know by posting them into this chat box or by sending me an email to nbartlett@eauc.org.uk. This webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded as a resource with all presentations later on today. Please feel free to share these resources with anyone who may be interested. Once the webinar has finished, you will be sent a short survey for us to gain your feedback. If you could take a few minutes to complete this, that would be great, as it will help us to improve our CPD and events. That's all from me now. Thanks again for registering, and I will now pass you over to Jamie.
Hello everybody, as Nina said, I'm Jamie Pearson. I'm the Environmental Sustainability Manager at Edinburgh Napier University. So what I'm going to do, the presentation will probably be about 30 minutes and then time for questions. So not going to take questions through the presentation, just in case there's a chance that I'll cover the response you need later on. So if you do have questions through it, either scribble them down yourself or stick them into the chat box, and then we can look through them at the end. But obviously, at any point, it doesn't have to be today. If you have any questions on the scheme, I'll give you web links, but also my contact details as well are there to use. So let's move on. Okay. So eCycle, here's our lovely logo. A very joint approach, which I'll explain a bit more as we move along. The logo was created by the comms team at Scotland's Rural College, so not harp on about it too much. But basically, for each of the pieces of work coming through, we all tied in together, we all helped each other, we all used expertise that we could access. For instance, even small things like the logo, when it came to here at Edinburgh Napier, our comms team couldn't help, unfortunately, so it would have been an external charge, whereas SRUC, their team, could help. So yeah, we got it through the support of their team. So it's all small pieces like that that actually came together with a project. So the fixed partners. So if you've not been to Edinburgh, you're not sure what happens in and around Edinburgh. Well, it's a bleak day today, so I don't know if there's too many cyclists. But yeah, we have 6 institutions, 4 universities and 2 colleges in and around the city. Through EAPC networks and other meeting structures, such as through City of Edinburgh Council, we do know each other, obviously, we do speak to each other. But I guess when it came to this project, the power of working together really helped. It gave us a lot more clout. For instance, the 6 organisations, we represent about 130,000 people in and around the city. Now, in terms of the City of Edinburgh Council's perspective, we're aware that not everybody lives here, but certainly people are studying here in a variety of different programmes. So gave us a bit of push when it came to looking for external funding, but also, again, helping each other out. Project partners at the bottom, I have to be very thankful to Cestran. So Cestran are the South East of Scotland Transport Network, basically the local network for our area. Without their immediate support through funding, I'll come on to that later, but they gave an initial injection of £25,000 into the project. If it wasn't for their support, immediate support at the start, I think we'd still be struggling to get going. And I see Jenny has signed in, Jenny Muir from Sustrans as well. Again, without Sustrans support, we're very lucky to have the Scottish team just along the tram road in Edinburgh. Their kind of guidance and support, looking again at various colleagues and existing programmes that they were aware of, such as an electric bike scheme up in the Cairngorms National Park. We really did rely on Sustrans for support. So it was a nice team approach, a lot of meetings. Actually, when I was pulling this presentation together, it didn't look much, which is maybe a bit of a weird thing to say, but actually all the squirreling away in the background to actually see what we wanted to do, it certainly took a lot of time. I guess as a group, so the people here on the screen now, we started looking at this 2 years ago. It could have been a quicker process. Not shy about that in the slightest, but as everybody has different challenges and different diary commitments, it just took a bit of time to move, but we got there, basically. So just to give you an idea at the start, I'm sure you've all seen them. You can obviously Google yourself. This is an electrically assisted pedal cycle, or an eCycle as we started to call them. Might sound daft, but the reason I'm showing you this is because we still have a lot of colleagues and students here that when you mention an electrically assisted bicycle, they have no idea what to picture. But yeah, basically we have 22 of these within the network of 28, and it's a giant Prime E+2, so it was the 2014 model with a motor down at the pedals and the battery fixing at the barrier at the back. Excuse me. So we obviously didn't start from scratch, as I've already highlighted. We had the support of Cestran and Sustrans, but also we did a lot of background reading through the EAPC network, so the Sustainability Exchange, but also just through word of mouth and sheer gossip, to be honest, to see who already had existing programmes in place. If any of you are looking at a scheme yourself, I still have notes of everybody we looked at. We tried to pull as much information together as possible, and possibly again, if you're looking at a network, to try and answer all the queries we had, especially when it came to, say, insurance or what would happen if the bikes were damaged, or user agreements, or whatever. So a couple of nice photos. What I should explain is, as much as we want as a team of 6, we did intend to procure the bicycles as a team of 6 initially, but then because of time considerations, the Transition Harriet Watt team had to go ahead before the rest and buy this. Their bicycles were being bought through a Climate Challenge Fund project. So Climate Challenge Fund up here in Scotland supports community-based organisations on carbon reduction programmes. So it actually meant that as a group, we kind of benefited overall as them being the guinea pigs. So they went ahead and bought 5 Scots bicycles about 4 months before we did as a collective group. So again, all the information you can, the people in the photos, all the information for Abby, the lady there with the brown jacket and the green t-shirt, all their stuff there is there to share as well. Emma's going to kill me for the cheesy photo, but in the pink jacket is Emma Crowthers, the transport manager at Edinburgh University. Again, as I mentioned, worked through Sustrans, so Mike Dennison there looking at the Cairngorms National Park, and that brought up a huge amount of information. So it was looking at short-term loans, it was looking at what the users had actually fed back on electrically assisted bicycles. What I should say for the start is, through our background review, the reason we chose electrically assisted was basically to start as an experiment. Through the 6 organisations, we could all see that we had travel survey results for various years covering staff and students. We could see that people were interested in bike loan or bike schemes, but we had no real evidence to show if it would actually work. So that was a reason why we started small, but also a reason why we started we electrically assisted. Edinburgh, again, if you've been, it's quite hilly, it's always windy, it can be a bit damp as it is today. All the organisations, so the 6 of us, we all have split campuses pretty much, so travel needed for some staff and students between maybe up to 5 miles, I guess, within the city. So we kind of looked at all the factors and thought, well, if we were starting small, we'd maybe start with these bikes because they would give us a lot more than a regular bike for experimenting. So that's how they came of it. Again, all the documents I'm referring to here, you're more than welcome to take copies. They're not on our website, as most documents are, but we can certainly email them along. Looking here, apologies for the small text, but these 2 pages represent 2 of about 11 pages of the invitation to quote. Again, as all public bodies, we had to go through a fairly rigorous tender or invitation to quote process, and that was actually quite healthy because it made us as a group really think, what do we want it to achieve, but also how picky were we actually going to be. Discussions again went on because we had some information to base it on, but really for looking at what we wanted to get the invitation to quote right for the very beginning. And it did take a while, and discussions were a bit ridiculous at times, and that was as much my fault as anybody, even time to consider, did we want to specify colour? Did we want to specify particular areas? I mean, we don't go as far as specifying spokey dokies and reflectors and whatnot, but we really wanted to see what we wanted to give out of this project, so what we needed then as the bicycle to help us through. The invitation to quote included accessories. I'll come on to more information on them in a minute, but also a maintenance schedule. We were very keen to bundle everything together to see if we could source a supplier that could give us everything in one lump. So the bicycles, the accessories, and 2 years of maintenance. We knew that maintenance would come up quite strongly through risk assessments, for example, to show that the bikes are actually safe to use. So we wanted to basically try and source a supplier that could give us everything. We went through Edinburgh Napier's invitation to quote assessment process. Again, we appreciated that we were probably quite irritating to potential suppliers because, as I'm sure you're aware, you can go out and buy a bicycle for X £100 or X £1,000. You can have fancy helmets or basic helmets. So we left it fairly standard and expected the suppliers to come back to us with reasonable prices and also reasonable instruction on what they recommended. Because of that, we accepted more than one submission from each supplier. So we had 11 submissions altogether from 4 suppliers. And that actually gave us a good insight to see when we were assessing the invitation to quote against, it was a price score of 40% and a quality score of 60%. That as much as we were looking for a good price, we were looking for bicycles and maintenance and accessories that would really last what could be harsh winters or just day-to-day running, to be honest. So looking at it, the winning company, local company, which obviously through the assessment process we couldn't guarantee, but we're delighted when that happened, and that certainly proved fortuitous since just for the team being within a 10 minutes, 20 minutes cycle from our campuses certainly. But so the Edinburgh cycle company, which also trade under the electric cycle company one. So Neil and the team there in the city centre certainly are, I guess, not tied into us, but we now have a good working relationship with them for the next 2 years to work through. It was an interesting process because, again, as I said, Harriet Watt bought 5 independently. We were buying 22 here collectively, and then, if you've noticed, there's one missing. That's the University of Edinburgh cargo bike, which I'll come on to in a minute. Buying 22 electrically assisted bicycles in one go is not unheard of, but it was quite unusual. Buying in bulk and buying as a team meant that the supplier could go direct to Giant to see if they could, in turn, supply them with a good deal, which did happen and which we benefited from. But again, as much as the full invitation to quote information is there, I can also share the information we got back from the winning supplier. So you've seen a picture of the bike that we bought, well, out of the 22. We also bought accessories, as I mentioned, helmets and high visibility vests. Under current legislation, we can only recommend their use. We have all considered independently, should we make it mandatory that you must wear a helmet or must wear a vest if you're using one of our bikes. But certainly here at Edinburgh Napier, we've decided that it's the responsibility of the users to choose what they want to wear. Again, we have users, or frequent users, who use their own helmets or use their own jackets. But we basically have enough equipment there for one helmet, one vest per bicycle to use. When it comes to small day-to-day issues that, to be honest, I had considered but probably not enough, and we've had to really think on how to clean all the equipment, and certainly the helmets we've had a lot of debate on what cleaning to do, because again we don't want to damage the helmet itself, but essentially what we use are wipes for the spongy areas within the helmets, not on the kind of polystyrene or external area themselves, but anything where people, I guess, are immediately touching on their heads. The vests are fine, that's basically to wipe, but it's all those daft things with cleaning that actually take a lot of time to get right and to consider what to do. In terms of accessories and security, through the procurement deal, we bought 2 panniers for each bike, a pump for each bike, a 1.5 metre cable lock, and a gold standard D-lock. We were very particular about asking for gold standard D-locks to try and essentially encourage the best kind of fixings and security that we could. To be honest, looking at the locks, we do have issues with them. The keys are a bit pernickety, for want of a better word. We've even gone as far as having to ask users not to use WD-40, because that is ruining them, and also to mark with a pen. If you can see the D-lock there, the keys in the middle, we've had to mark with pens how far the lock actually the key has to go into the lock to use it appropriately. So even small things like that have taken considerations, and again we have had one user who couldn't actually unlock the lock. Luckily she stayed 5 minutes away from where I stay in the city, so that meant I could just skip along after work, but it would have been a lot more hassle if she was somewhere else. So small things to come together. Again, with the panniers, if you're looking at electrically assisted bicycles, they are slightly different, or the Giant ones certainly are slightly different from standard bicycles, in that the kind of basic panniers that you can buy don't necessarily fit, because the metal sections on the bicycles are slightly thicker, it seems, in some areas. So the panniers here that you can see on the image, top 2 clips work perfectly. The bottom middle to stop it flapping around didn't, because that metal fixing was too thick. So the shop for us here at Edinburgh Napier gave us a quick fix, so we have a Velcro strap. But that, to be honest, we labelled it pannier gate because discussions on panniers went on for far too long. But we looked at 3 different varieties, and to be honest, a lot of the cheaper panniers were absolutely useless because they would bounce off. So we've ended up with something that works, but it actually took a long time to get there. The pumps are okay for emergency use, but we're trying to see if we can get better fixed pumps on campus to use. Excuse me. Again, small things, we are stickering everything up, more so that we can manage what goes in and out. But from my side of things, the reason for stickering up and being quite careful with who has what when, not so much if it goes missing, although that is important, but more so for things like the helmet. We want to ensure that it's not damaged because we'll have various different users. So we want to make sure that they're looked after so we can trace back who's had various pieces and if they're damaged or in one piece to see what actually did happen. Again, took the decision helmets, any damage, they would be dumped unfortunately in a new one spot. That becomes particularly important with the battery. We've had to be very careful to, I guess, encourage people. It's quite exciting that the Motion battery does give you that extra oomph and push. But the battery, we have to be very careful in case of damage. Recommendation is if the battery is dropped and the plastic casing is split, the battery isn't taken inside and is disposed of appropriately and carefully in case of fire risk. To be honest, that's something that made me a bit itchy when it came to our environmental management system, thinking of a battery with potential cracked casing, but we have good systems in place to encourage people to use them appropriately. What we've got is a 36-volt lithium-ion battery. That was what was recommended through the team at Trustrands to aim on, basically because there's no memory, so it shouldn't be an issue and should probably, or hopefully, last longer. The batteries we have, if you're using the gears and the different gauges appropriately, will last about 50 miles. Or to be honest, days where I've been a bit lazy or couldn't really be bothered cycling, the battery just goes quicker if you have it on full sport mode. I'll explain the modes in a bit. But again, the batteries, you're looking at about 1,000 charges. I recommend it, but we've heard of people using them for a lot longer. So looking at the technical side of things, once more, kind of repeating myself, you can have a copy of the risk assessments that we've pulled together here at Edinburgh Napier, no problem. The risk assessment is 8 pages long. It's a bit cumbersome, but we want it to be very careful to make sure that we got it right, essentially. Our health and safety team were very helpful. We did expect some resistance, but we approached the programme looking at the positives and the fact that we are working as a team. The risk assessments was something that it was up to each of the 6 organisations individually to manage and develop. As I'm sure, as an environmental manager, I'm sure I am pickier over things that some people might not be, and vice versa in my kind of peer group or role. So I'm sure when it comes to health and safety, there's always going to be local considerations or differences. But actually, again, working collectively, we managed to iron most things out to show it's the basic school playground thing of, well, if they're managing this, why can we not manage this to go through? So the risk assessment was a good process and helped us to look at user agreements and whatnot. Sorry, the text has gone a bit wonky there. It should say insurance. That was something else we were very careful with. It might seem a bit morbid, but I spent an afternoon sitting with our procurement director who has responsibility for insurance to essentially list all potential eventualities of when we might possibly need insurance. The morbid element comes from, if you can read the text, that looking at different accidents that may happen when users have the bikes out. Touch wood, we've not had any, so thankfully we've not had to consider this yet, but we wanted to be careful that we had adequate insurance in place to cover all eventualities. To be honest, in theory, the insurance that we did buy, which is about £75 per bike per year, and that was the cost we were given at Edinburgh Napier. Again, the cost and the insurance providers were different at each institution. It mainly covers if we have a user who hurts somebody else or damages somebody else's property while they're out using the bicycle. We had big discussions about how we are still located in NHS. We had discussions about HR policies that we have here internally, in that if staff fell off the bike independently with nobody else, it was purely their risk or their issue, that there was adequate coverage in place. Again, when I come onto the user agreement, I'll show how strong we had to be there to essentially make sure that when people take the bikes, they are signing that they are competent and they are happy that the bike is in a good condition to use. So to move some focus and responsibility onto the actual users. Again, I've not given you the completed document here because I'm happy to give the list of questions we looked at, but again, since insurance considerations were different in our 6 institutions, it's important, if you're looking at this, for you to approach it yourself. So that was all a bit laborious and a bit behind the scenes, but it all had to happen, unfortunately. We had a bit of a grace period. The bikes were delivered to us in November 2014. We took the opportunity, as did everybody else, to basically keep them quiet, although they were noticed because they were quite shiny and fancy and nice in the bike stores. So people did start to ask about them. The positive there was people did come and ask, so they knew who to ask, so they knew that we existed, which doesn't always happen. But it meant that we could have quite a slow test phase. To be honest, it was exceptionally useful and helpful to have that phase. We all squirreled away on our own bikes, but we kind of worked together to pull to kind of common issues or common things that we were coming across. Even small things like the seats releases, we ended up getting quick release installed. We are very aware that that could mean they're stolen easier, but actually to give people Allen keys when they're maybe borrowing the bike for a couple of hours was a bit of a faff. Picture on the left shows our principal, Professor Nolan. She was doing a tour of property facilities, so we took the opportunity to show her a bike, to basically, if she's going to her meetings, coming across people that could use one, she knows they exist. On the bike is my manager, who is now acting director here in property facilities, Patrick, who was our director at last university, and Kasia, who has worked in our team for the past year through Bright Green Business. So Kasia, to be honest, who you'll see there, and also in the other picture with the vest on, standing outside the city chambers in Edinburgh, has been a phenomenal support to the programme. As much as having the bikes and actually getting the bikes took a long time, to actually encourage use and to speak to people, to do inductions, to promote, to take along to freshers fairs and whatnot, has taken a lot of time, and Cash has been a huge support there. Another reason for showing you the picture on the right is Cash and I, one of the first journey we took the bikes was the City Fair Trade Group meeting, which we attend. We went along to the city chambers and showed the bike there as well. So we've been, I guess, pawning it out wherever we could, just to show the benefit. Again, it goes back to the fact that we are 6 key organisations within the city, which might sound a bit arrogant, but actually it's not. It's more of a support that we have 6 organisations, we 6 teams looking at transport, for instance. So we do feed in and vice versa to the council team quite a lot. The Lord Provost chairs that meeting, so he had a go in the quadrangle. You can see it in the picture. So actually, it was a good chance to just have a shot. That's a bit of a ramble, to be honest, but it's more to say that again, it took time. It took time just to meet and experiment and to actually get the bikes out there and to show people. Again, poor old Kasia. She was a bit of a guinea pig to begin with. We have an in-house photography team, so we were very lucky to get some of their time for promotional images. We didn't want to show the bicycles as kind of daft or drab or, oh, here's a bicycle. We wanted to show it as an interesting and quite a dynamic way of getting across campus or moving around the city. So pictured our campus in the background. That's our Sighthill campus, and you can see the white background, the white building, sorry, in the background. That's one of the Edinburgh College campuses. So we are direct, friendly neighbours. So the two campuses are quite near the city bypass. There's a perception that being anywhere near the bypass means you're on the moon or practically in Glasgow. But actually Edinburgh, being a small city, bypass the city centre, I can do it in 20 minutes on a bike, and that's going relatively slowly. So to show people that there are options on off-road cycle paths. But again, we were very careful to show pictures of Kasia in amongst traffic. At Edinburgh Napier, we have about 18,000 students. Of the students, about 6,000 are international students. So when we're developing the programme, we wanted to be very careful that we set up training programmes, we set up support and help for students that had possibly not cycled on our side of the road before, weren't aware of UK road legislation or guidance. So we got a mixture of pictures that we could use in different circumstances. Again, you're more than welcome to use the pictures if you want. It might be a bit weird because we are very careful to show our campuses in the background or areas that people would see. But yeah, the photos have been a huge help to push promotion along. One thing we did get a bit of stick though through social media, we did try and mix it up slightly, but it was Kasia's choice and my choice that the photos would be with Kasia with a helmet and a vest on, and that was basically to show what we have to offer and give people. But we were given stick from people that we were accused of not normalising cycling because we had given a vest, which was utterly ridiculous. Normal is a mixture of everybody and anybody with personal choice. We're not going to do a whole new set of photos with no helmets. We'll stick to what we've got and explain ourselves in a sense through the text. Through all this experimentation, promotional work and whatnot, we started to pull together documents, and well, I should say Kasia pulled together documents that would help us in the long run. So even looking at basically the guidance for the Giant Prime and pulling together maintenance checklists that we could go through, and that was maintenance for us on a day-to-day basis, just to check that things were working, down to get a maintenance report through the 6 monthly checks that we had paid for. This was basically just a case of looking through Giant's website, pulling off all the different components of the bikes, but setting ourselves a list of expectations in that we set quite a strong structure that if anything breaks, we don't fix it. We call in the company to come and fix it. They have experts, they have all the equipment. But it's things like oiling or looking at ensuring the brakes are actually working, not fixing them, but make sure they work, then we can do all that. Unfortunately, damage does occur. I was really mortified because I was the first person to scratch one of the bikes, and it really irritated me. But in a sense, I was quite happy that I did it to remove guilt for anybody else. But yeah, accidents do happen, scratches happen. Unfortunately, we've had one of our bicycles vandalised when it was being used and it was parked in the city centre, and it was petty vandalism. Somebody had basically kicked in the tyre and ripped the seat with a knife, it looked like, which is quite concerning that they had a knife, but never mind. Again, Harriet Watt, unfortunately, have had one of their bicycles stolen, and that was quite recently, within the past month. What that's resulted in here is us taking a consideration again in how heavy we are on encouraging people to lock the bikes appropriately. It looks as though the Harriet Watt bike was just locked by the front tyre with a D-lock. So again, we'll produce more guidance on this is how you lock the bike, which seems a bit too much hand-holding, but actually, if we want to look after the equipment that we have, then we need to be careful. Again, the reason for the damage checklist is a bit like if you're hiring a car. We want to ensure that if damage occurs for whatever reason, people are open and honest. We're not going to shout and blame if there's scratches or slight bits where it's been rubbing against the Sheffield stand or whatever. But we want the users to be confident that when they get a bike, that it's a good bike to use. This slide here is basically Cassia pulled it together to keep us right. I have a bicycle, I've cycled for forever, but when it comes to all the technicalities of what's the cassette, what's the derailleur, what's the crankset, what's the whatever, and for the users as well, we wanted to basically prepare a bit of a map so that they could, if there was an issue, they could identify immediately the term, the name, and explain it to us where we could then go and seek help. Again, this is available to share for anybody that wants it. So lots of experiments in user guidance being pulled together. So here at Edinburgh Napier, our scheme or our bikes are open to all staff and students. That does vary at each institution. For example, at the University of Edinburgh, they couldn't get insurance coverage for students, so their bicycles are just for staff. So back to here at Edinburgh Napier, we've pulled together a mandatory induction. So every single person, no matter if they're already a keen, enthusiastic cyclist, goes through an induction. Main points there are to show how the battery is inserted, is to be very careful to ensure it pushes in properly, how to use the controller, what to expect from the bicycle. The bicycles are about 22 kilos, so they are heavier than a lot of other bicycles. So even for practical experience of how to move or position. Again, back to why I scratched the bike, it was primarily because I hadn't used the stand and I had leaned the bike up against a Sheffield stand, so we always encourage people to use the stand and appropriate place to lean them aside because they're a bit top heavy and wobbly and compared to a regular bike. So mandatory induction, at that stage everybody signed a user agreement, which I'll show you in the next slide. In the panniers we've got A4 laminated basic information sheet. Just essentially if you're out, you've had your induction, but you want to check yourself that you're inserting the battery properly, that's there in the pannier. We have a user guidance booklet online, but also again this is what the team approach came in very handy in that the team, so Lauren and Abby at Transition Harriet Watt, pulled together 3 phenomenal short videos on how to use the bikes. Unfortunately the hyperlinks here didn't work for me before, but what I've done there is insert the web link that we've got, and the 3 videos are there through the web link. So about 8-minute introduction showing all the different aspects, the 2-minute accessories, how to fit the panniers, what to do with the bike battery kind of things, and also how to conduct an EMB check. So we quite blatantly stole information from various people on how to do an EMB check, but the video just shows quite nicely how to pull that together. To be honest, looking at the YouTube, I should say they're on YouTube on the university site. Not many people are looking at them, but we'll see how the promotion goes to encourage. But a lot of support, but also email address set up, so if people email eCycle@napier.ac.uk, they can get us. So lots of on-hand support for users. I can send along a copy of the user agreement. We worked as a collective team as well to ensure that we were helping each other out in terms of the terms and conditions. As I said before, we've been very careful to set it up that the users themselves agree that they are a competent cyclist. We I'm not going to assess the competency of cyclists, because my fear would be that would open us up to a huge issue if somebody was then to fall off and we had assessed them as competent. So that's why we have the induction, and that's why we work with organisations, again, like Sustrans, to have basically training sessions for people who might need a bit more confidence, or it's a long time since they've ever cycling proficiency or whatnot, if that still exists. When it's got to the user agreement stage, we have had people who we've not given bicycles to. It's been a conscious decision, and to be honest, when that's happened, it's been twice here. The users have been very supportive of that decision, because we've offered training and we've offered support. We had a student recently who had just arrived in the UK. He admitted he wasn't overly sure about our roads regulations. So he's staying with a host family, and his host family took him out, showed him around. He was a cyclist already, so actually that confidence now, he's happy, we're happy, his host family are going to help him out and go on cycle out, so that's fine. But again, terms and conditions, all there to look at competency, to look that the bike will be stored appropriately, and to look that the people using the bikes, given that our university logo is on the bikes as well, that the bikes are being used appropriately, following the highway code as well. So, lots of squirreling away. As I said, one thing I found very strange pulling together this presentation is that when it's on paper it doesn't look like a lot of work, but actually it was. And it's been very useful, and I'm happy we've done it, but it took a long time to get to the launch at the end of March. Again, photos were taken by our in-house photography team. Scotland's Rural College, their comms team, organised all the communications, which was very helpful. And actually the pictures make it look a lot warmer than it was. It was actually freezing. But to be honest, the day that we had to launch, the bikes actually helped. It was windy, it was horrible, it was cold, there were rain showers. But the value of the bikes to show that it would help you through the wind, it would help you up Colton Hill, was brilliant. With very good support, so the three people that you see on the bikes there, the two co-conveners and the deputy convener of the cross-party group in the Scottish Parliament on cycling. So great support for the three of them to come along and take photos, speak to press for an hour. And again, the picture you can see there with the 6 people, that's a representative for each of the 6 organisations. So Edinburgh College, Edinburgh Napier, University of Edinburgh, Transition, Scotland's Rural College, and Queen Margaret University. That's the only picture I have so far of the cargo bike that you can see in the middle. I've not mentioned that so far. Basically, when we started the project, Emma, the transport manager at Edinburgh University, highlighted that they would like to look at a cargo bike as well through requests that had come through colleagues at the university. So again, as part of the experiment and the project overall, they bought a cargo bike using some of the grant funding as well within the wider team network. So it's useful because we are aware that we have technical teams moving around, so once Emma starts to pull together some good data, we can look at the use of cargo bikes. Again, it's electrically assisted, so there's support there, but that was the launch. It helped with a lot to kind of push the bikes off internally and externally. Again, small text, but the launch press release was quite a nice moment because it pulled together how the team approach to this network had really helped. And also as well how the team approach to an experiment. We still consider it an experiment. We still would hope to buy more bikes through this, but we need to just see how things work. Excuse me. So just to finish up a bit of a summary, all the documents, as I've said, you're more than welcome to have copies. When it comes to institutional responsibility, if you have particular questions depending on your situation, size university, or who you would expect or would hope to use any bikes that you're looking at, we might need to split you up to speak to various different people in the team here. but certainly looking at responsibility for booking, cleaning, communication and whatnot, it's up to each of us individually to do. So again, I keep repeating myself, but the value of 6 organisations means we're all going through it together, so we can all share and we can all look at best practice to see and to look at. Looking into the future, since the programme started, as I said, it's been quite a long process. University of Edinburgh gained funding through Cycle in Scotland, so they've bought 50 regular bicycles to be based at their Pollock halls of residence. So there's good information there through Emma and the team how they're managing that bicycles. Looking at here at Edinburgh Napier, we had a new student accommodation site that was open this academic year, so just a few weeks back. Under the Section 75 agreement, the developer had to buy 6 bicycles for the site, so they're giving us the opportunity to try something different in Edinburgh through the ScotRail contract and also the new bus shelters we have in the city. There's gossip and rumblings afoot to look at wider city-wide shared schemes. Bello have bicycles now been to Edinburgh at the Haymarket train station and other train stations to look at encouraging train users to then use their connecting journeys and continue them by bicycle. And as far as we're aware, the City of Edinburgh Council are looking at a city-wide bike share scheme. The reason we battered on and went ahead ourselves is because there is currently no scheme within the city, and at the point we started there were no firm plans. If the council does look at developing a city-wide scheme, certainly here at Edinburgh Napier, we'd look to try and integrate into that as much as possible. Purely again because of that collective benefit, but to an extent having our own scheme is useful, but we prefer to fit into something city-wide so that we can then encourage, a bit like City Car Club, kind of wider participation and use. And yeah, for future development, we just need to keep going as a continuing experiment, just to see who's using the bikes, how we're using them. What I've not really mentioned is each organisation uses them differently in terms of how long the loan period is. We've started that we will more than welcome people to take them for 2 hours, but we would kind of push for people to take the bike for a week to experiment with, just to see how it works. So I should explain that earlier on. But that's me, to be honest. That's the scheme in a nutshell. It's a bit of a rattle through, but truly and honestly, if you have any queries, then my contact details can certainly be shared. And I guess now it's an opportunity for questions. The more the merrier, and any random questions, because it's certainly been a random piece of work.
Hi Jamie, it's Jenny and it's Sustrans.
Hi Jenny.
Hello, hello. It was just a quick question. I wondered if you guys had collected any data about what sort of journeys the eCycles might be replacing.
Not at the moment, so that's why I thought somebody would ask, but I was trying to sneak away for that question.
Sorry.
Yeah, thanks. The team at the University of Edinburgh have pulled together an online, basically booking form, but also they use it as basically a way of seeing if there's a bike coming in with damage, how they can get that bike out the system immediately, basically. Built into that is a question asking when the bike is booked, what are you using it for, what are you replacing, and estimation of distance travelled. So the rest of us are looking at similar programmes, but apart from ad hoc stuff here at Edinburgh Napier, we've not got anything in place yet. But that's something we definitely need to do, because we need to justify to Sustrans kind of what we've changed or gained. But again, we need to develop something that's not cumbersome. And again, for you guys at Sustrans as well, given your support, we want to make sure it's something that is useful.
it's something we're increasingly being asked about from organisations, and yeah, the more sort of evidence we can have to say that it's potentially cutting down car use, then great. So yeah, I was just wondering. So,
yeah, I mean, certainly here we have about 22 active users. We've added the length of time that they've had the bikes, and they've all given back ad hoc kind of information. But yeah, we want get something that's easy, that they basically say, here's my start point, here's my end point, this is what I replace, this is the number of times I did it. Yeah, that's something definitely we need to get going on.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for anybody else?